Brother Paul, salam alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Thank you for coming to see us
The
this
honor is mine.
morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
And it's really a fascinating project you're having, Blocking Theology.
Alhamdulillah.
I've seen several of them. When did you start that?
I think it's about 2 years ago now, so not too long ago.
Now, what about your journey to Islam? How did it start and when?
Well, it started a long time ago, and it's not a very interesting story, I'm afraid, but I was brought up in a nominally Christian home in a county called Essex, which is east of London here in England. In my early 20s, I was pretty much an atheist, a secular person. But one morning I found myself cycling back from a party, I think, one Sunday morning through London and where I had moved to. And I saw a beautiful building. It was a church, actually, classical architecture. I thought I'd just pop in and have a look round. Why not? Wasn't doing anything else. So I wasn't intending to go to a service or meet anyone or anything. So I went into the building, looked around, and I had an experience which is difficult, very difficult to put into words. But trying to put it into words, it was like a very powerful experience of love, an invisible kind of spiritual experience. And it was too much for me, and I felt overwhelmed by it, and I actually had to leave the building.
Was that what denomination was that church?
I think, well, looking back now, it was a Church of England, but it wasn't. I didn't go there for any Christian reasons or any theological reasons.
You just liked the building.
I just liked the building. It was just, I still do. But I had this extraordinary experience, and of course, I went back a week later to see if I could have a repeat experience, and nothing happened. But that experience, which I understood to be quite a spiritual experience, an encounter with God's love, perhaps, started a spiritual journey, which led to my conversion to Christianity about a year and a half later, in a Baptist church in London, near where I still live. And then only much later did I embrace Islam, once I had started to read the Bible, particularly the Gospels, and I discovered problems which to me threatened my beliefs as a Christian. So I believed Jesus was God, I believed in the Trinity, in the incarnation and so on, but I was reading things in the Bible which seemed to contradict that. And so that started me on another journey by reading biblical scholars and books and things to find out what's really going on. And ultimately, I decided to look into Islam as well, because I was becoming quite Islamophobic as a Christian, as a conservative evangelical Christian.
So the beginning was a hostility toward Islam.
Yes, but it was based on complete ignorance. So this was obviously after 9/11, and there was a sense, as I say, quite a conservative Christian, that Islam was a competitor. And it was becoming bigger and bigger in England, and so this caused anxiety in my mind. I didn't kind of manifest it openly, I don't think. I talked to one or two Christian friends about it. But one day I just decided to go to my local mosque and just to talk to the Muslims there, not to convert them or anything, but just to find out more about the religion, because I knew that the media wasn't always fair about religions. Sometimes it misrepresented Christianity, for example. So I thought, well, maybe I don't know the full story. So I went there and literally walked in the door at Regent's Park Mosque, which is my local mosque in central London. And I remember, uninvited, without any announcement, walked in the front door. On my right, I saw a bookshop. So, right, I recognize that. So, I went to the bookshop, and I was immediately spotted as this kind of, English guy who obviously had never been there before. And I was, some very kind brothers there took me under their wing, and they bought me some books and a Quran. And over a period of several months, I gave myself 3 months to learn all about Islam.
But it took you 7.
I now realize I know very little, and it's a lifetime, several lifetimes knowledge. But no, I learned about. I read the Quran from cover to cover in English, of course, and learned about Islam. I argued a few times, but ultimately I discovered something that I didn't know existed, and that is Islam, not what the Daily Mail may say or Fox News, but real Islam from Muslims. And that was a real eye-opener. And that began a process which over 18 months led ultimately to my embracing Islam.
Now, what about your family? I mean, did that create any problem in terms of your family relations?
No, because I didn't tell them, of course. I didn't say anything. My mother, who is now passed away, but she was a Christian missionary, of all things. Um, and I did tell her, and she was actually okay, surprisingly. I'm not sure she approved, but she didn't make an issue out of it. I think she valued the relationship more than she did, the problems that it might cause to the relationship. So,
Maybe she preferred you as a Muslim to being
well,
an atheist.
this is true. This is true.
What about acquaintances, friends?
Well, no, that was not so good. I had a very close friend who was actually was a head of RE in a London school. He like myself, was a very committed Christian, when I became when I told him I said my shahada, from that moment on, he never spoke to me again. And
Wow.
he's never responded ever to me, and I've given up now. It was like I was cut out completely. I've become a non-person.
He took it personally.
Yes, I think he was horrified. Actually, I mean, I know he would have been, because he and I shared many. I was very close to him as a Christian, and I know what he thought, and he wasn't approving. He wouldn't have approved, so he just cut me out completely. And I've never spoken to him since.
You think probably he feared for himself?
I don't know. He didn't tell me. That was so. I lost some good friends, but I made many new friends. So,
So the Muslim community was embracing?
yes, absolutely. So many wonderful human beings I've met, and still continue to meet people today who I'm absolutely in awe with. Some extraordinary people who are Muslims in Britain and internationally. And it's just the way that Ummah is growing now. I mean, I was just saying, I was in Cambridge yesterday and meeting with Muslims there, and was just talking about this. Shahada's happening all over the place.
Yes.
Something is happening. I mean, the media perhaps haven't caught hold of it yet, but certainly in the West, Islam is flourishing in many new conversions, or many more in recent months. I'm not sure what's going on, but something's going
Well,
on.
I think the more it is subjected to attack, the more it comes under attack, the more people are curious about it, and they want to know what's going on. So
Yes,
so
and
it
I think,
opens doors, actually.
yeah, and I think that there are some quite prominent personalities, sports people, and other social media people, about mentioning their names. We want to know who they are, who've embraced Islam in the recent past, and that influences people. There's a lot of stuff on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, so there's something going on. So it's extraordinary.
I think also, and I don't know if you yourself, because in your own program, probably you meet lots of interesting people.
Absolutely.
Increasingly, people are more courageous in coming out and declaring that they've chosen to be Muslim. I remember in the old days, I became acquainted with a brother who was doing a PhD in one of the universities, and he told me that part of his research was about a community of Muslims in Britain who don't declare themselves to be Muslim,
Yes.
and many of them are actually in very high
positions of power.
positions.
This is true. I mean, someone I know who I met yesterday at Cambridge, Abdul Hakim Murad, Dr. Tim Winter. He's a
Very well-known figure.
yeah. He's an academic at Cambridge University, and he's the dean of the Cambridge Muslim College, where I visited yesterday. And he has said on my channel, actually, Blogging Theology, that he calls these people submarines. This is his term, and this is not frivolous. So you get people in positions of great authority. I mean, when he said this to me, and this was about a year and a half, he mentioned someone in Downing Street, not the Prime Minister, I hasten to add, certain individuals who he knows are Muslim, but they don't publicly declare it, not because they have any secret agenda. It's because of their families and their responsibilities would result in quite negative consequences for them if they went public. So they quietly pray, they give charity, and they're good people, and they submit to God, so they're good citizens, but they don't make it public. But it's more than that. There's an individual, and I'll go into details, a very senior MP in the Italian parliament, who's actually on the far right, who has made contact with Abdul Hakim Murad, or at least had when I spoke to him a year or so ago about this. and he is very seriously thinking about converting to Islam as well. So people on the right, and this is a new phenomenon as well. People on there are people on social media who are associated with the extreme right, even, who are taking an interest in Islam, who've been very Islamophobic, but begun to learn about Islam, and it suddenly they realize what's happening.
This is similar to the story of Yoram, the Dutch former politician, who also contacted Abdul Hakim Murad.
Exactly. So Tim Winter seems to be the go-to guy for not just people on the right, but quite senior people, because he's a trusted figure. They know that he's a good man, he's a very respected scholar, and someone he can be trusted. And so they have private conversations, and he doesn't seek them out, they go to him. And quite often they end up at a process of conversion, actually. But they don't always go public, but some do, like the Dutch politician.
I don't know if you are aware of the recent disclosure about Churchill at one time expressing interest in converting to Islam, especially after coming back from Sudan, but he couldn't do it because of family pressure.
Absolutely. I think today what's different now is we live in a much more multicultural society in the West, particularly in Britain or London. And so the sense of the otherness of the Muslims, they belong to that ethnic group, is breaking down. The Muslims and Christians are neighbors. They work together. They live together. And so there's a much freer exchange or an openness to Muslims and thus Islam. Whereas before, as you say, with Churchill, it would have shook the establishment in England.
True.
If he become a Muslim, it would have gone down in history. Whereas now it would be less of an issue, I think.
Now, in terms of the community of converts, or what we refer to sometimes the reverts or the new Muslims, is there a community is there a community emerging where people are linking or interlinking, working together?
Yeah, well, because of social media now, it's extremely easy to form connections and networks with people all over the world. So it's not even geographically located, it can be international. So yeah, but I don't get the sense we have separate groups for reverts. I get the sense we're quite quickly integrated into the community.
Into the large community at
which
large.
Is usually very welcoming, actually. I don't sense we need to be separate just so we can keep warm together and not, we're quickly integrated. Yeah.
But I have a sense talking to, some, not all, but some of them converts I speak to, they feel that some of their needs, some of their requirements are not attended to by the larger Muslim community, because we are ethnically grouped. You go into a mosque, this is an Arab mosque, or you go to another mosque, this is a Bengali mosque. You go to another mosque, this is a Pakistani mosque. And people like you, where do you find yourself?
Well, yeah, I'm sure you're right. That's not been my experience, because I've been very fortunate, alhamdulillah, because Regent's Park Mosque, which is my local one, is not like that. It's not ethnically homogenous.
It's not, yes.
So, I mean, you get people from all sorts of backgrounds, obviously many different Arab backgrounds, but people from Africa and the Far East and so on. So it is not homogenous. But I think one common experience that many converts to Islam have from a Western English background is particularly like during Ramadan, for example. And this isn't deliberate. This is just a consequence of the way things are. Ramadan is quite family orientated, rooted in a community where you visit your relatives, they come around. If you're a revert, you're often on your own. You find yourself isolated, and this is a very common experience I found, actually. Particularly if you're not married you're married into another traditionally Muslim family, you can often find yourself on your own. Yes, you can visit the mosque. Yes, you can go out, but people are not coming around and neighbors and relatives and celebrating, when you break the fast. It's something you have to do on your own, or you go to a mosque. So that could be quite a lonely experience.
Now, what sort of other challenges you yourself met since your conversion?
Oh, lots. And I made lots of mistakes, and because it's a huge learning curve. It's not just an intellectual journey, not just a spiritual journey, which for me is kind of more manageable, but it's a cultural and social journey. And sometimes there've been misunderstandings. Sometimes I've got things wrong. but it's been an amazing journey, and it's still continuing, alhamdulillah. And I've learned so much. So it's difficult to know where to begin, really. But I do recommend that people, particularly those looking to embrace Islam or new Muslims, is to make good friends, people who follow mainstream Sunni Islam, what I call normative Islam. Don't get too caught up with sectarian arguments, because they're there, so you'll get some Salafis will criticize some Sufis and vice versa, and you get this kind of sectarian conflict going on. And I'm not saying what's right or wrong about that.
It's distracting, isn't it?
It is distracting, particularly for new Muslims who need to get grounded in praying 5 times a day, beginning to practice the faith. And that can take many months or even years to really bed down. So not to be distracted too much about that, just to keep to the main path and make good friends. And alhamdulillah, people will be fine.
Now, have you been to any Muslim countries since you converted?
I have now, yes. I went to Bahrain last year, and I've been to Turkey a few times. Alhamdulillah, inshallah, I will be going to Hajj later this year. It's not confirmed, but it's looking promising.
Inshallah.
That'll be my first time there. But no, not greatly traveled, no. But I feel as I've traveled online quite a few places, but no, I really want to go to Egypt particularly, obviously.
Now, through your blog,
yeah,
how often is it? Is it you do these interviews on weekly basis?
No, but sometimes a bit more than that, several times a week.
Depends on availability.
Yeah, it depends on my stamina as well.
And it's usually with people who converted to Islam.
No, it's not. No, it's not normally. No. But part of the DNA of the channel, if you like, is building a bridge between the ivory tower of academia to the man and the woman, intelligent viewer, so they can learn more about, say, the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, from experts. So I've had experts on, some of the greatest experts in the world, from Harvard or Oxford or Cambridge or Yale or whatever, to talk about, say, the Bible or the Gospels or Islamic theology, Aqidah, whatever. So, but inviting them on to talk about whatever their expertise is about, to try and make it intelligible, understandable for a lay person like myself, so we can benefit from their expertise. So I'm not there to debate people, I'm not there to polemicize, I'm there to learn and to take what's good from what they say. So I've had some fantastic guests, like Dr. Ali Attai from Zaytuna College, the Islamic college in Berkeley in California. I mean, he's done some marvelous videos on the Gospels and the crucifixion and so on. Very educational and often quite entertaining. Yeah.
So your guests are not exclusively Muslim.
Correct. For example, there was another interesting, is a Catholic priest who teaches at Zaytuna. He's a professor, and when Benedict XVI, the former Pope, died a couple of months ago, I invited this Catholic priest on, who's a scholar, a professor in his own right, to talk about the Catholic Church and the way the legacy of Benedict XVI will be seen by people, and who was he and how did he, so, and that was purely a Catholic discussion, because I'm an ex-Catholic myself. But I think it's of interest because the Catholic Church is the biggest church in the world. And it matters.
And the most resourceful.
Yeah, well, yeah. And, and it matters that we understand the church as Muslims, and hopefully they understand Muslims as well. So it's part of what I call raising the bar of knowledge, helping us to understand in a more informed and even academic way the issues that Muslims and Christians and Jews and others face today.
Do you have any sense of who actually follows you, watches your blogs? Is there a way of telling?
Yeah, there's on YouTube, because the channel Blogging Theory is on YouTube mainly. There are statistical analysis one can access behind the scenes. So I know the demographics of the age range, and many people from the US and from the UK and from Indonesia and the Middle East and so on. So I know roughly where people are from. But also that the academics who watch it as well, and students who can access the material. to help them in their courses. And some of the content is very scholarly, it's quite academic as well, and that can be helpful.
Any interesting moments that stand out in your conversations?
Yeah, well, there are many, but one that's often referred to is a man called Keith Ward. Now, he was, until his recent retirement, the Regius Professor of Divinity at Oxford, so Britain's most senior Christian theologian, and he is himself an ordained priest in the Church of England. He's a very, very nice man, very, very senior, brilliant man. And I invited him on, and I knew the answer to my question, but he then said something else in addition. So my question was, do you think Muhammad was a prophet of God? Now, I knew what he was going to say, but it's what he said afterwards that I didn't expect. So he said, yes. Okay, well, really? Okay. So Muhammad's, but I knew that because he's a fairly liberal Christian. Then I said to him, well, what about your colleagues, your Christian theologian colleagues and the Christian philosophers in your world? This is the world of Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Yale, a very high level. What do they think about Muhammad? Do they think he's a prophet of God? And he said, oh, yeah, they do. Nearly all of them do. And I thought, what? And I didn't. This is on YouTube. You can see it. And I think that shocked me because I didn't expect him to say that. And I think what this speaks to is the huge disconnect between, at the very highest levels of what I call the Christian ulama. They're very, very well educated. They know about Moses and about Jesus and Muhammad, peace be upon them all. And they recognize that the prophet is a prophet, but they don't really say so publicly because these people often have, positions in the church, but privately they see that. But the average, so-called average person in the pew in the church don't know what these scholars think. And so they're completely unaware of that fact. So what struck me is that for the last 1400 years, you've had this civilizational clash between the Christian West and the Muslim world. And in a sense, at the highest level, the Christian West have conceded the point that Muhammad was a prophet. But the news hasn't filtered down.
Yeah, but this also brings up another very important issue. If a person says, I do recognize Muhammad as a prophet, it must have it must be followed by action.
Yes, well, this is exactly right. So my next question after that is, in a sense, I was, without trying to put it too simplistically, but why haven't you become a Muslim? That was my question. And, or they didn't quite put it like that, but he knew what I was asking. And he gave an answer, which you'll have to see on the channel. And it was a bit of, I didn't find it totally persuasive. He gave reasons why he hasn't embraced Islam. He didn't feel he had the need to. He said, well, Islam leads to God, Christianity leads to, he didn't feel the need to do it. And, I'm not going to judge, it's up to him what he does. But I think the important point for me was that a very learned Christian theologian, in fact, the most senior Christian theologian in Britain, appointed directly by the Queen at that time, the Regius Professor of Divinity at Oxford, is not like an average professor, acknowledged that he was a prophet and said that his colleagues knew that too. But it's not something they really made public. And that's extraordinary.
Deep down in their hearts, they know Muhammad is a prophet from Allah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the opposite is not true. It's not like the ulama and the Muslim world secretly believe Christianity is true, obviously not. So it's very much the sense that they have seen the truth. What they do with that is the question, and that's between them and God.
True.
If they decide not to take the next step, which is to actually follow the prophet, which you think they would do, I pray 5 times a day and so on, that's up to them. But it means that, the dawah works, the truth, if we share the truth about Islam and the prophet and the seerah and the Quran and so on, then it can have an effect.
It can indeed. Well, Brother Paul, thank you very much for coming to see us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.